This is why I train in martial arts. How even if somebody is not armed with a weapon, it can still be considered as using deadly force. Basically, if there's just a huge size difference, power or physical ability difference. So keep this in mind when you're employing your training. And let's check it out.
It can also take the form of disparity of force. Disparity of force is a category of situations where the unarmed attacker has such a physical advantage that he's so likely to kill or cripple the armed person that that advantage becomes the equivalent of a deadly weapon and allows his intended victim to respond with deadly force. We can see examples in this room. Anyone in here with a physical handicap attacked by an able-bodied person is facing disparity of force, and in a true violent attack is authorized to use a deadly weapon in self-defense. As a general rule, the female attacked by the male, because society recognizes males tend to be larger, have greater upper body strength, and have been acculturated to be more aggressive. We spoke of the physical handicap. That can also be a handicap that occurs in the course of the fight. You're an able-bodied man in prime of life, but in the course of the fight, the other man has been able to break your kneecap. Now you can't move away from him. Now you can't fight back on an equal force level. At this point, we've reached deadly force level for you to respond with. It could be something as simple as position of advantage. The two of you are exactly the same height, weight, physical skill. But the other man manages to get you down, and he's banging your head against a rock.
Ground and pound.
But the other man gets you down, and he's stomping you. A kick that before might have broken a rib, when you're down on the ground, now becomes lethal force. Because if you've ever read in certain law books that are laws of states that a shod foot is a deadly weapon, doesn't mean a guy kicking you in the butt. It means if you're down and being stomped. If my colleague on the left throws a punch at me here, I can slip the punch, I can roll with a punch, but if he gets me down, I can't do either of those things.
Ground and pound.
And now my head here is caught between the underlying ground and the crushing force of his whole body weight. And in that situation, his position of advantage becomes the same as a deadly weapon and would authorize me to draw my gun or knife in self-defense.
If you ground and pound, they can shoot you or stab you because you're on top of them and they can't move away from the force.
Force of numbers is an extremely common example of disparity of force. The single individual attacked by 2 people, 3 people, 4. So that would be the ability element. The opportunity element means capable of immediately employing that power. If someone up there in the back row was threatening to stab me, I'd certainly be concerned about it, but he has a great distance to travel. He has to get past several rows of seats, and he has to get past several people who, at least one of whom I hope, would stop him from stabbing the poor little old man. But if instead he's up here with us, nothing in between us, the tests have shown since the pioneering work of Dennis Tueller in 1983, the average adult male from a standing start can close a distance of more than 20 feet and stab their victim in an average time of 1.5 seconds.
And they can do it using the goofy stab that we train against in martial arts classes. Takes no skill at all.
So in that situation, the opportunity factor would be in. And finally, the third element, jeopardy. Jeopardy means his words and or actions manifest an intent to cause death or great bodily harm as it would be interpreted by any reasonable and prudent person such as yourself. When those 3 things come together, deadly force is warranted in self-defense.
I was going to do this as a separate video, but I'm not. Because it still talks about disparity of force. This is Andrew Bronca on another video, talking about when somebody doesn't have a gun and they can hit you with disparity of force as their defense. In other words, where the gun person can shoot somebody that doesn't have a gun because of these factors.
Clearly, a gun-wielding attacker represents a disparity of force unless the defender also resorts to a gun or some other deadly weapon in self-defense. But there are a great many ways an attacker can present a disparity of force justifying a deadly force response even without possessing a weapon of any sort. So let's talk about some of the common situations in which a disparity of force arises. Naturally, if the attacker possesses a weapon, whether a gun, a knife, a bat, or any object that's being used in a way to cause death or grave bodily harm, the disparity of force exists. But what we're really concerned about in this lecture is where the attacker does not possess a weapon. Where can there exist a disparity of force that can justify a deadly force response for a quote-unquote unarmed attacker? Well, for one thing, is if there's more than one attacker. If there are multiple attackers and a single defender, there exists a disparity of force that no normal single person can defend against without resort to a weapon.
So if you jump somebody, they can shoot you.
Similarly, if the attacker is much larger or stronger than the defender,
They can shoot you.
a similar disparity of force is created. The courts have long recognized that in most cases, a male attacker versus a female victim represents a disparity of force, because in the normal course of events, males tend to be larger than females. They tend to be more familiar with physical conflict than females. Of course, this is very fact sensitive. If you have a 150-pound male and a 300-pound female, the disparity of force is going to be more difficult to argue. If you have a male who is known to be of peaceful disposition and a female who is known to be of violent disposition, the disparity of force argument becomes more difficult to make. Also, if the attacker is someone of exceptional fighting ability, there's someone who's wrestled, they box, they street fight, they're an MMA,
That's us.
they're a karate expert, and the defender does not have a similar exceptional fighting ability, there is a disparity of force under those circumstances that can justify the defender going to a weapon when otherwise they might not be permitted to do so.
They can shoot you if you know karate, and they don't.
It's also important to recognize that a disparity of force might not exist at the start of a fight, but can develop during the course of the fight. An attacker and defender of essentially the same size and strength may possess similar fighting ability at the start of a fight. But if the defender suffers a broken arm in the course of the fight, a disparity of force has been created that did not previously exist.
So you do that arm bar on them and break their arm, and then you won't stop. You keep beating them after that, they can shoot you.
That now existing disparity of force can enable the defender to make use of a weapon in self-defense where such a weapon would not have been justified previously. The bottom line, where an attacker presents a threat of death or grave bodily harm, regardless of the means, whether by weapon, other object, or simply a physical disparity of force, the defender may use deadly force in self-defense.
So you've got to know when to stop. You've got to know when to stop. Okay, if you roundhouse kick them in the head and they fall down, you can't keep stomping them. You have got to know when to stop so that you're doing self-defense and you're not trying to kill the person. These are peacetime laws. I mean, if you're in a war zone, it's a war, you're in the army or something, that's different. But here, we're not super soldiers off on the front lines. We're regular people learning martial arts. And we have to take into account these things about disparity of force. So check out these two videos. I'm going to put links to them in the description below. And don't say you don't know, because if you didn't know, now you know. Peace.